Welcome to the Lucidez podcast, where I explore everything, because I believe in the infinite, unbounded potential within each of us. This is Shelley, a fellow seeker and a lover of life's mysteries. I invite you to join me and explore your uncharted depths. Greetings and salutations, everyone. I did not ever think I would do a podcast in this situation, but this is where I find myself, and so I'm moving ahead. And I'll tell you where I am. I'm actually lying in bed, and I have a cold. You can probably hear that. And outside the window, it snowed last night. It's so beautiful. This morning, everything dusted, and the geese are honking. I'm at my brother's house, and he has a very large area. The geese and ducks love to come in the morning. You may hear him singing or whistling in the background as he moves down the hallway. He's always singing and whistling. You might hear him outside my window as he goes and feeds the geese and the ducks, checks on his bonsais. This is where I am this morning, and the other place I am is deeply in touch with my ancestors. And my journey with my ancestors is, I guess, close to about 15, 16 years. And I would say I'm a reluctant traveler with my ancestors. I wasn't interested in any of this, was not really spiritual in any way, really didn't believe any of it. But as things began to happen in my life that I could not refute, I began a journey that has led me here. And I want to say at the beginning of my journey with my ancestors, it was extremely difficult in that every time I connected with my ancestors, I found incredible grief and pain, and it was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning in it. It was so painful. It was so hurt. There was just so much hurt in that space, and I felt like my ancestors were hurting me, and I didn't want to ever try to connect with them, but at the time, there was no choice to connect. They were connecting with me and making it clear that I had some things I needed to do on my side. And every connection with them, I just hurt and I hurt. And so I started to equate my ancestors with hurting. And I would think my ancestors are hurting me. And why are they hurting me? And then I remember sitting and meditating in my room one day. And this is again near the beginning of my journey. And the thought came from within me, and it was such a beautifully delivered message. And I get a lot of messages, and they all come with different energies and rhythms and tempos, and they sort of fit the message. And this one came in such a beautifully metered rhythm that every word came in time with the whole. It was a very short message, and I wasn't entirely sure what it meant when I heard it, but it brought me peace and began a journey of understanding that I'm still unraveling today. And that message was, my ancestors are not hurting me. My ancestors are hurting. My ancestors are not hurting me. My ancestors are hurting. And that began to change my whole relationship and understanding of my ancestors. And I began to understand that they too had lives where there was a lot of pain and grief. And for whatever reasons, that had not been dealt with. And that hurting was still there in their life. Whether their life has happened before or after or at the exact same time as mine, that's a whole nother question. But the hurting was still there. It hadn't been processed, composted, transformed. I don't even really know that I know what happens, but I know something happens because things, some 15 odd years later, are so much better. There's far less pain and grief and hurting when I connect with my ancestors. And I want to offer this message because in my next episode, I'm going to share a very, very painful experience in my life. And what I realized is that when I began to finally deal with this painful experience in my life, I realized that I have ancestors that the exact same thing happened to. And I want to explain just a little further, and then I'm going to let this be a very short podcast. So for those of you who feel you are not ready to be triggered, then this is a trigger warning. You may want to turn off the podcast. I'm going to speak about rape. And what I want to share is that I am a survivor of rape. And I hid that for many, many years. And when I finally was ready to step forward and deal with that, I was led to discover a book. And that book is called The Sewing Girl's Tale. And in that book, there's a woman who is the first woman whose rape goes to trial in the newly formed United States of America. And that woman's name, a young girl, really, she wasn't but 17, her name is Lana Sawyer. And my name is Shelley Sawyer Jensen. And Lana Sawyer is a distant ancestor of mine. And when that book came into my hands, I was in the middle of my rape trial, which I am now. And I realized some 15 years later that my ancestors are not hurting me. My ancestors are hurting. And if you happen to ever read the book, The Sewing Girl's Tale, you'll see how poorly that trial went for Lana Sawyer. And of course, she is hurting and grieving for so many reasons. And then today I am dealing with my rape and going through my trial and hoping for a very, very different outcome. And so what I want to share with you is we don't always know how closely linked our stories and our experiences are to our ancestors. And that the healing that we do allows them to heal, allows the hurting to subside, allows the pain to go away, and allows us to connect to our ancestors in all of their glory and not just the hurting. So my next podcast, I'm going to talk more about this book and how it came into my life, because it truly was like the most miraculous experience, and my rape and what it's like to go through a rape trial. But for now, I just want you all to know that we are held with such care and such concern and such love, even though there may be grief and pain. And I would also want you to know that the emotion you hear in my voice is not grief and pain. That is in there, but there is so much love, so much appreciation for my ancestors who have been and are a huge source of love and guidance and support. And as much as I may feel overwhelmed by them, I also know I would not be here without their strength and their tenacity and their courage and their willingness to live, their willingness to die, and their willingness to do all of this together. And I want you to know I love each and every one of you who hears this message. Whether I know you or do not know you, we are here together. And I think that is so beautiful.
Thank you for exploring with me on the Lucidess podcast. It is my hope that you discovered new wisdom within yourself and are inspired to live your unique strokes of genius.